Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Wellness Blueprints. I'm Jess Milner. I'm so glad you're here to nourish your roots with me today. And today, being this is airing on the last day of 2025. So, a very gentle, happy new year going your way. And that is what I want to talk about today because, of course, there is this vibe going on now of, old energy is clearing, new energy is coming in, and great things are coming. And that tends to be the vibe a lot of the time, like, this time of year as we go into the new year when people are like, oh, I want to start fresh. I'm going to do this. You start your workout program, stuff like that. Sometimes stuff like that works. I will say that it was January of 2016 when I decided that I was going to start, working out. And that was the time that it actually stuck. Now, there were other Januaries that I tried that and it didn't work. So, you know, so I want to address this here because we've got lots of people. We've got people that are kind of like, oh, this isn't the real new year. The real new year is in. And the thing is, the entire thing of old energy clearing, new energy coming in, and great things coming, it doesn't depend on a calendar. Like that's always happening. But let's talk a little bit about this because I've seen, we've got the year of the horse coming with with our Chinese New Year that's going to be happening in February. So, this is like really big forward energy. Horses, they just go charging forward, so it has to do with like action and progress, expansion, maybe travel, things like that. And there's going to be some speed going on with it too, because horses have a tendency to like speed. So this is coming from yin and yang. Chinese they go off of every culture has a little bit different with how they look at all of the energetic symbols and everything. So of course, yin and yang. So a horse is going to be more yang, more on like the active side. So like when it's balanced, you're like you feel vitality and you're confident and things like that. When it's unbalanced, you might be like all scattered and burnout and anxious and stuff like that. So we don't want to be unbalanced with that. But so you look at it and you're like, okay, well, the horse can you go running forward this way and the thing, like it's also about, freedom, like I'm running that way. The horse is, like running towards, freedom. But you also like in the midst of all of that, you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to tolerate any BS anymore. I'm not going to tolerate this nonsense. I'm not going to tolerate that. And that's okay. Set up those boundaries and everything. I'm always saying set up boundaries, like anything you can do to put up a wall and just be like, because not everything, they're not all your circus. They're not your monkeys, Most of the time, it's like, you know what, I really don't need to worry about that. But this year should have kind of like a pull to alignment. And that's kind of like, the general vibe over here in Jess's world. If you have been part of my world here, alignment, we want to be pulled towards alignment because if you're out of alignment, that's when everything starts getting all wackawoo and no. So, this year, it's going to be, there's going to be some like speedy feelings and everything, but be careful not to get scattered, okay? Because you want to make sure, like I said, set those boundaries. If you have goals for your career path or something awesome, write those down and get rid of toxic relationships. And that can be with people, that can be, there's all different kinds of stuff that you might need to get rid of there. But be careful with your be careful with getting scattered. This kind of energy will have people kind of like going full force to speak their truth, stand up on top of a hill and insist that they need to die there for multiple different things. That's what can happen when you get scattered with this kind of energy. Don't do that. No, it's not a hill you need to die on. I don't even care what it is. You probably don't need to die on that hill. Okay, ground and regulate before you do things like that, okay? Because, like I say, there's old energies clearing, new is entering, great things are coming. This is true all of the time. So we don't need to stand up there and go because, you've got this horse, big momentum, big forward energy. But that momentum, it doesn't start with a calendar, it starts with you when you're ready to move. So it doesn't matter when it is. So, we have this time of year where like, you have this like, let's start fresh kind of an attitude. And that can actually add a lot of pressure. So sometimes it does work. So that year that it worked for me, well, that's because I was in a different space. I was in a place where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't be in this spot that I'm in. So I need to move forward. And it just so happened that that was the time of year that it was. I didn't start it on January 1st because I had to like order my workout program. I did PIO and it was before they had the body, like the whole thing that you could just subscribe to. So I bought the DVD, like a PIO, right? So I had to wait for it to arrive and stuff like that and everything, But that was the beginning of that kind of transformation. But the thing is, your body is always transforming. Your body's always doing new things. Your body, whether you're taking supplements for it or not, your body is detoxifying. Your body is processing your food and your nutrients. Your body is digesting. It is sending messages through your hormones. There are constantly things going on, transforming and changing inside of your body all the time. So like, yeah, remember to eat. This is something that's not just for New Year's. Remember to eat real food. You do not need to name your diet. Be a human that eats real food. If you want to name your diet, I mean, that's cute and everything, but it kind of adds all these extra restrictions and everything. You should just be eating real food. Okay. And, whatever that looks like for you right now is probably okay. We don't have to stick to something for like the long haul all the time, but, you want your protein and you want your healthy fats. You want to have some like good carbs that like, don't process too fast, like root carbs and stuff like that. Make sure you're getting plenty of minerals. So if you're eating your veggies, if you're putting some salt in your water, you want to make sure that you are getting well-rounded. Don't eat naked carbs. Okay. A plain old carb, like if you're like, oh, look at this bread, it's so yummy. Put some butter. Okay. Like put something on there so it's not a naked carb because it's going to slow down the way that, and then it's going to, help with the rest of it and everything. Okay. And if you're super, like burnout and, upset and depressed and everything, intermittent fasting is probably not what you want to do. You don't want to tank your hormones. Okay. There's constantly things that are going on in there. And, it's always a time for transformation. It does not matter what the calendar is. I mean, there are people who are up there like ready to die on the hill that like, this is not New Year's. Like, this is not the New Year. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Sure. Yeah, spring rebirth, April 1st. You know what? It really doesn't matter. Yin and yang, they're talking about two sides. Everything kind of looks at like, here's the black, here's the white, like here's the active, here's, the denying. There is a neutral force. There is a whole gray area in the middle, and you can go there. You don't have to be on top of the hill, ready to die on top of the hill. You don't have to be under the hill. You can just be on the hill somewhere. You can be observing the hill from over there. That's okay too. Okay. Old energy is always clearing. New energy is always entering, and great things can always be coming. So you don't have to begin again just because it's January 1st. You don't have to begin again because it's February 1st or the Chinese New Year or April 1st. You don't have to begin again when the calendar says to, because that's not going to be in alignment with you. Who made the calendar? It doesn't even matter. Your body has its own thing going on. Your body has its own actions, its own progress, its own expansion. Your body can work with speed and your body can work slowly, appropriately, because certain things work faster in our bodies than other things. So that old energy is always clearing. New is always coming in. Transformation is always happening. You don't have to begin again because you're already becoming. So from me to you, Happy New Year or Happy January 1st. I hope you've enjoyed this holiday season. And remember that you are already becoming. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Happy New Year. I mean it.